Hello and welcome to the first day of Vlogmas. So today is going to be really chill. We're just going to have a little chat and I'm going to let you know the 5 things I learnt in 2020. It's going to be quite an emotional chat, so I advise you open a drink. Woo! I was never good at pouring sparkling drinks, so that will have to do. So cheers. Before I jump into this conversation, obviously I am coming at it from a perspective of a wedding supplier who had no weddings this year. It was very emotional, it was very traumatic. It brought about a lot of opportunity, but it also brought about a lot of loss, and I had a lot of really emotional conversations with my couples this summer. It was a really tough time, but I learnt so much in 2020, and I'd really like to kind of share what I learnt. So the first thing that I learnt in 2020 is to honor your emotions. And that sounds like a really woo-woo kind of whimsical thing to say, but let me explain. So when the pandemic hit and we were discussing cancelling weddings and postponing weddings and stuff, I didn't actually have very much of a chance to process what was happening. I think it was different if you worked in an office. If you work in an office and you were sent home to work from home, then I think some people actually got more of a respite, like a period to kind of understand where the world is now. It might have been a really stressful period of realization, but it was still a period of realization. But for some people, you just didn't get a chance to rest. Like, you didn't get a chance to put your brain down and actually understand how the world has changed. And I am one of those people. Like, as soon as things started to look like we would need to cancel weddings and postpone weddings, I just had to start working. Like, I had to postpone these weddings, I had to contact these suppliers. I was making weekly update videos for my couples. I had to be on top of it all. I had to literally be a shoulder to cry on for a lot of these couples, so I had to be very strong. And it meant that because I didn't have a chance to process my emotions, I took it out in many other ways. So when George Floyd passed away and that horrible video came out, I was mad. I was hot, okay? That hot. I was so hot. And I was like pacing around the kitchen and I couldn't get anything done. I was so angry and I didn't let myself properly process and heal from that anger. So I was just irritated for like 2 weeks. I was just pacing and not being able to sit down. When Chadwick Boseman passed away, and I am not someone who idolizes movie stars or has heroes particularly. I'm not someone, I don't consider myself someone like that. But that really hit me hard and I felt really off and I didn't know why. And it's because I didn't let those emotions process. And then in November or in October, I found that I had really short patience for everyone. Like, I was snapping at people, I was snapping at people in my life, I was snapping at suppliers, and I was just being very irritable. And it was because I was pushing myself way too hard. Like, I was pushing myself to do all of the things and burning myself out and not allowing myself to process. So these 3 examples are showing that even if you don't deal with your emotions, they will deal with you. They will take it out on you somehow. So I learned this year that if I am feeling off or there is something going wrong, I need time to process that before I go back to work as normal. The second thing that I realized in 2020, and possibly many other people realize this in 2020, is that you need an emergency fund. I have spent my entire 20s just living it up, spending like crazy, thinking that there's always going to be money around the corner. I'll just work extra hard and I'll make more next month and I'll make more this month. And up till March, that was true. That is no longer true. There's no longer a correlation between how hard I work and how much I earn. And without an emergency fund, I have really struggled. Case in point, you may notice that I have not done any Instagram stories for the past 2 months. And that is because in October, maybe, my phone just decided to bleed to death. So I've had to use this like little cricket phone. It's an old Samsung, but the camera quality is so bad that all of my stories would look like this. So as you can see, that just wouldn't work. So without any savings, I have had to scrape together and build a savings pot so that I could buy a new phone. That is a big lesson that I learned, that you need to have savings just in case something like this happens again. The third thing that I learned is that it's okay to do what you need to do to survive. Now, I had always gone in with like a fairly naive notion that in the entrepreneurial space, if you have your own business and you need to get a second job to support yourself, that you've somehow failed. And that's such a stupid thing to think. And it stopped me from actually finding other income streams when I should have this year. So I waited quite late to capitalize on my other talents. I write, so I do a lot of writing for blogs and businesses. And I resisted for the longest time in doing that. I was like, no, I'm just going to save Nulyweds. I'm just going to book a load of wedding clients. But the fact of the matter was that that was not possible. So to do what I do, I have had to find other sources of income, and that is totally fine. I think that it's totally fine for any entrepreneur to take a second job, whether that is bagging groceries or, you know, making something and selling it on Etsy, or, you know, doing something freelance like I do. If you need to do that to survive and to provide for your family, then that is what you need to do. And I learned that that is really important. No one should ever feel ashamed for taking on extra work if you need it. The fourth thing that I learned was to be more gracious of the people I have around me. This is a big one. So, I have a tendency to self-isolate. I am naturally quite an introverted person. Yes, very chatty, very loud, make a lot of jokes, all of those things. But naturally, my energy comes from within myself, not from others. So I have a tendency to kind of cut off myself from other people. And I think they boil down to the same thing, the same problem, which is that I really struggle to need people. So when it comes to delegating, I'm a terrible delegator because I'll just try and do everything myself. When it comes to, you know, needing support from friends and family, I am the last person to ask for someone for emotional support. I won't, you know, I'll just kind of lock myself in my room and keep people away. And the reason that the lesson here is to be more gracious of the people in my life is because even through all of that, I have some really amazing friends that have just stuck around anyway. Even if I ghost for like 6 weeks because I just need to be in my shell and in my head and try to work out how I feel for a little while, they're always still around on the other side. And I am so extremely appreciative of that. I'm so happy that I have people like that in my life that, you know, are there no matter what. So this year I have learned that I really need to be more gracious and appreciative of the people that surround me because they are wonderful. And the final thing that I learned this year is that timelines are absolutely useless. So say, oh, okay, you want to get married by 31 and you want to have a baby when you're 32, and you want to have a new house before you have the baby, so somewhere between 31 and 32. You have these kind of timeline goals in your head that make no sense, okay? And I think that COVID showed us that they make no sense. What I mean by this is that I have couples that are doing things all out of order because COVID made them, you know? They're having their baby before they get married. They have decided to completely change their plans and move cross country, which they never thought that they would do, but COVID had made them realize maybe perhaps that they like working from home and they want to start a new business and they want to live somewhere in the countryside instead of working a high pressure job in a city and living in a small apartment. It just recontextualized all of our priorities, I think. I think it really just shook us. Had a really hard reset, sometimes in the most violent of ways. You know, I have couples who have lost people in their lives. So much devastation that's come out of this year, and it has made us really shake and rethink everything, rethink all of our goals, rethink all of our timelines that we had in our heads. And I think for me personally, it's made me realize that timelines are just useless. I have therefore decided that the way that I'm going to go about goals and what I want in life and recontextualizing all of those things is to think of it really long term. So I know roughly what I want my business to look like in the next 10 years. I know roughly what I want my life to look like in the next 10 years, but whenever I get there in those 10 years really doesn't matter. I don't have an ideal age that I want to get married in. I don't have an ideal age that I want to retire. I actually don't want to retire personally. I don't choose to retire. I don't have a plan. I just have a vague vision. And I think that that's a more sustainable way of living. So I hope that you enjoyed chatting with me. I really enjoyed chatting with you. This was very cathartic. Let me know down below one lesson that you've learned this year. What have you learned in 2020? And hopefully I can add to my list of lessons with your inspiration. Come and chat with me on Instagram, down in the comments. Let's have a discussion, and I will see you tomorrow. Cheers.